Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the Strategic Priorities Communication and Intergovernmental Cooperation Committee for Thursday, November 30th. I'd like to welcome all viewers online and those in attendance here in person today. So just for call to order, are there any declarations of conflict of interest? None. Seeing none. And Councillor McKinnon is unable to be with us today, so we do have quorum, and we will proceed without Councillor McKinnon here today. So could I have a motion for approval of the agenda? Moved by Deputy Mayor Yankoff, seconded by Mayor Brown. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. And approval of the minutes for October 31st. Moved. Oh, can I go back to the agenda just for a second? No? Can't. I would like to add under new business the terms of reference. I just have a question I just want to ask about that. Can I put that in under new business? Are you okay with that? Yes. Deputy? Okay. So when we come back to new business, I'll add that on there at that time. I'll talk a little bit more about it. In terms of the minutes, approval of the minutes? Good. Any questions? Just one thing under the Housing Accelerator Fund. Is there a need? I know we were talking about when we had the revised letter, it had as appropriate and subject to public consultation on the official plan and whatnot. Should that be, that was reflected in the letter? Should that be reflected here just to further clarify that? Or is it, or, because the way I kind of read it here, it just says that we're, I don't know if that has to be in there, or is it is that clarification required? It would be on the page 3, possibly under the second paragraph. We would consider 4 units of right moving forward as appropriate and subject to public consultation, however the letter read. Well, the letter, it said we would clear language under which we would consider 4 units as of right moving forward. But the letter said we would consider 4 units as appropriate and following public consultation on the official plan, was what the letter said, right?
Thank you, Chair. So in here, you'd like to see as appropriate written in here somewhere?
So whatever the letter said, however we rephrase that letter, because we said in the letter it would be, we would consider 4 units as of right moving forward as appropriate and subject following
according to our planning process.
In with the public consultation.
Yeah, we can.
I'm just wondering whether the minutes should reflect what was actually in the letter, because that's what the letter did say.
Can I just ask a question for verification? Did that language come from the council meeting once the letter went on council? We got it.
Yep.
So, Mr. Chair, we inserted as appropriate, whereas another municipality, which I think applies here too, stated that they didn't use as appropriate, but except where technically not possible. It is a moot point?
Yeah, thank
Doesn't
you.
matter.
Through the chair, so we literally use the word.
As appropriate?
Words as advised.
Yeah.
Through CMHC.
Yeah.
And Minister's Office. As appropriate was enough to cover technical issues, social issues, environmental issues, yes, climate issues. So it left the wording openly. It was open enough that to recognize there may be places where that's not.
The Federal Minister's Office of Housing, Sean Fraser's office, said as appropriate would cover the bases.
That's correct. That's what
Just
we
like
were advised.
accept where technically not possible.
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Okay. So what do you want to put in, Mr. Chair?
I guess I just want the minutes to reflect that.
Good.
Yep.
I'll move that.
Just for clarity, I think. I think it should be there. Just one other, on page 4 with the cell phone usage, that request was deferred, or the topic was deferred. I did defer that discussion before. It did get brought up at the last council meeting, not as part of the agenda, but it did get addressed, or it did get spoken
Yeah,
about.
it gets
but-
spoken to, and I
Yeah.
think it
And
is,
it
leave it
was-
as is.
Yeah, so just leave it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know that was, the request was for that to be deferred. Anyway, that's fine. Apart from that, anything else, I'm good to go. Good? All right. Okay, moving on to item 1, Tartan update. Sue Fraser, if you want to take us over with that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a follow-up to previous conversations around the adoption of a city tartan as presented to us through Northern Waters, a local knitwear and tartan shop. And the request was to do some further follow-up with them to seek clarity on their use of the tartan, as well as any legal opinion that might be required on copyright and that type of thing. So we did our due diligence with regard to our own legal counsel and circling back to Northern Waters as well. And we're quite comfortable with the recommendation at this point that council would support the recommendation to adopt the tartan as presented, and that the mayor and CAO would enter into any necessary agreements around the commercial use of the tartan. It's understood now that Northern Waters would have exclusivity the first year of production of the tartan, and that from then on, we would have some sort of agreement with them as far as future use. And if required, if it was something that we wanted to use as a visual identifier, we would just, we would do an adjustment to our own visual identity policy at that time. It's not anything that's required right now, but down the road, we would look at including the tartan as a visual identifier in our own policy if we were going to be using it. And again, because the copyright is actually with Northern Waters as the creator of the tartan, any use that we had for this tartan would be by virtue of an agreement with them. So that would be the part in the resolution that would read that mayor and CAO be authorized to enter into any contracts or agreements would be on that premise.
Sorry, could you repeat that last part again about the copyright? I didn't quite hear you.
The copyright piece is that this is Northern Waters, the producer, the creator of this design. It's their design. So it's not our design, it's not our copyright, it's their copyright. So if we were to use that tartan for any kind of gift program or anything like that and use it for anything, we would need permission from them to do that. So the MOU contracts, agreements, that kind of language that goes into our resolutions, it would be in that resolution in the context that we would need an MOU with them to use the tartan.
Okay.
And basically, they like to see where municipalities and provinces or whoever they're doing this work with actually adopt it as the official tartan, just simply because it makes it easier for their path forward. It has to go through the Scottish Tartan Organization in order to get adopted, so it just helps with that exercise.
So after year 1 then, Sue, if ABC Knitting Company in New Glasgow wants to enter in and start doing something with that tartan, do they deal with Great Northern Knitters, or do they deal with the city of Charlottetown?
It's my understanding that, according to our legal counsel, it's Northern Waters Knitwear, it's their product. So if someone else wants to create a tartan with that design, they would need their permission, not ours.
Okay, good. Just trying to clarify.
So, Mr. Chair, there must be other municipalities, jurisdictions that have this kind of representation. Did we look into what best practices exist elsewhere, i.e. Copyright? And would there not be a charge to use that copyright or get access to that copyright for the city? Like, those are just preliminary questions. But did we flesh all that out?
Yes, the part of the legal counsel was doing a little bit of research. I had also done some research preceding that, but there was examples listed in the a response that came from our legal counsel with respect to municipalities that have tartans registered, and there is, restrictions on the tartan's use and ownership, and that would be the language that would be in any kind of MOU that we sign off on moving forward.
Okay.
And that would be yet to come back to you and the CAO.
And second question, Mr. Chair, is that, we all have symbols of our ethnic background. Does this open the door for other ethnic groups, whether they're Irish, whether they're First Nations, to approach the city and look at adopting their symbols of identification for the city government and how we represent the community? I think that's something we have to be concerned about, or not really yes, concerned, but also flush that out. And I don't know if that is the situation in, let's say, Halifax or Montreal or Quebec City or anywhere south of the border.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah. I'd just like to put it in as a footnote that, we could look at, or there could be the possibility of other groups that are part of our community, Irish, Scottish, which is this tartan representation. It could be our Lebanese community, it could be our Nigerian community. I just think that we have to be cognizant of the fact that other requests could be made, and we'll have to deal with them on a one by one basis.
But aren't we talking about the creation of an official tartan, not multiple tartans?
No, I know it's one tartan, but there are other symbols that represent other ethnic groups that don't come to mind right now. The one that's most prominent right now is the tartan. It could be with with our Irish descendants. It could be with our Lebanese descendants, that they have symbols that do represent through their expression in clothing or in any expression that is visually important in the community. So I just want to put that out there and have it noted in the minutes.
Go ahead, Sue.
Mr. Chair, through to you, Your Worship, there's certainly opportunity moving forward to embrace any other requests that come our way with respect to other cultures. We have many examples already throughout our city, the Celtic cross that's down on our waterfront. We have a lot of features in our city now that are reflective of culture. And this exercise doesn't preclude anything else down the road. It's just very specific to the Scottish piece, and certainly doesn't indicate to anyone, I don't think, in our community that we're looking at any kind of exclusivity, that there's opportunity certainly for other cultural groups to come forward with ideas of how we can be inclusive of their cultural identifiers as well.
I thought the thought behind the whole final product was very good, tying in Queen Charlotte Sophia, the 5 squares, into a woven fabric. I thought it was thoughtful. I thought it was respectful of our history and where we've come from. So anyway, it's good to know that we can broaden the scope as needed, and it doesn't bind us with anything. So I think it's great. We have to put forth a motion to adopt this, and I guess so to move this to council then, right?
Yes, your recommendation would be to move this forward to council, and at that point in time, we'll have a resolution prepared that speaks to that we're adopting the official tartan, and that the mayor and the CAO can authorize any agreements.
All right. Do I have a mover for that? Deputy Mayor Yankoff, seconded by His Worship. All those in favor? 2-0. All right. Thank you for that, Sue. Okay, next we have advisory board update. This stemmed from a previous request as we are looking to onboard our new advisory boards that come out with our code of conduct and training sessions with that. So as a follow-up to that, I'd call on CAO Eleanor to provide us with the next steps with regards to the advisory boards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a fairly short one. The meetings for training have been scheduled for December 18th at noon and December 20th at 4:30. It will be running through the code of conduct and any other important HR information pieces needed for these committees. And of course, there'll be a question and answer opportunity in there as well. So we're looking forward to it. Thank you.
What's the expected length of those meetings, Eleanor? Like it says 12 o'clock and then 4:30, different days. How long are they?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So right now, we're just planning for 1 hour.
Okay. All right. Good. Question, Deputy Mayor?
Two questions. One, are these going to be done through Zoom or WebEx, or are they going to be in person? My second question is, what do you do if not everybody ticks it off that they've done it? You know, because they're on these committees, and it is part of kind of the expectation that if you're going to sit on one of these ABCs, agencies, boards, or committees, that you would be expected to go through that 1 hour process. Thank you.
Eleanor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to the Deputy Mayor. They're online, and that's just for flexibility that people can take their lunch hour and call in and get the training. It's less about the training and more about signing on to the code of conduct. It'll be a signed document, and if you haven't signed the code of conduct document, you will not be able to participate on your agency board or committee.
Good. All right. Okay. Next item. Again, CAO Eleanor, this is just this motion got deferred at the November 2nd meeting and regular council meeting, so it was asked to be deferred. I guess it was the 11th or the 10th or the 11th. It was at our last regular monthly meeting. Anyway, so it was asked to be deferred. It was because I was homesick and I was dialed in. I was homesick, Your Worship. You had that wrong. You still thought I was away.
I didn't say anything, I just said you're not available to be here.
We'll debate that later. Yeah. Anyway, I was phoned in, and CAO Eleanor was away on business as well too. So we felt it was best to bring it back. So we thought we'd bring it back here just to kind of refresh ourselves in terms of what the nature of the motion was or the report was, and see if there's anything that we needed to change with it or add to it.
I don't think there's anything we can change, but I think we might want to lead this for the fourth Monday, because that's what we're dealing with. This may take some time at our regular monthly meeting in December, because there are some councillors that are concerned about more meetings and, formalizing how we meet. So if it doesn't get on our regular monthly meeting in December, I would definitely encourage to be on the fourth Monday. Then we can have, that's one item that we can deal with along with some other issues. So it might be a consideration that we want to take in mind, or something we want to consider.
Deputy, any thoughts?
I think there probably will be some fair amount of discussion on it. And with our monthly meetings of council already going past the 3-hour mark, it wouldn't be so bad to have it on another meeting so that we don't rush it. Yep.
Okay.
If you're okay with that as the chair.
It's not, I don't It's not,
No, it's, the agenda is something that for the monthly meeting that the CAO and I discuss, and I wouldn't want to postpone it without informing you as chair.
Sure,
And you
no.
will be forwarding that resolution,
Yeah.
or those amendments to council, and I would hope that, and, you know,
we're talking 2 weeks,
yeah, that's it.
so.
And it's after Christmas, and everybody's probably in better humor and cheerful.
So this would be, looking at the calendar, then this would be,
Will you be around, or are you going to be maybe somewhere else?
I will be here, your worship. I will be here. Enough of that. Enough of that harassment going on here. So we would be looking at, so the second Monday in,
Thank you, Mr.
December
Chair. It's
is-
the 27th.
what?
That's what's reflected in our scheduled meetings for 2023. It's December 27th.
Okay, so
meeting's
that
scheduled.
25th is moved till the 27th because that's the next
Yep,
first day after the holiday.
that's correct.
Okay, so we're suggesting moving this to December
I'm
27th?
suggesting it because, just for the time
I'm
frame,
good
and
with
I'd like
that.
to have a good discussion about it, because anytime you change the procedural bylaw, because that's what governs us in this chamber,
Yeah.
let's have it all out.
Good with me. Yep.
Good?
So we'll move that to December 27th meeting. Okay? Does that have to be a no, I guess we're just
No.
making a friendly amendment here, right? Friendly agreement? Okay, yep, sounds good, makes sense.
I won't call it a gentleman's agreement, I'll just call it an agreement.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could, to kind of speak to some of these items, there seems to be some misconceptions about things that are in here. The committee of the whole, the way that it's written right now between the procedural bylaw and the terms of reference, is it's not scheduled any day of the week in particular. It is scheduled as needed. Now, I know that seemed concerning, but we really could have benefited from the council budget meeting we just had in a committee of the whole format instead of in a council meeting format. Unfortunately, the way it unfolded from a governance point of view, the council meeting, regular council meeting format, or even a special council meeting format does not fit a workshop because it's not resolution and motion based. So that was a real challenge. So we just had a meeting that from a governance point of view didn't really meet what a regular council meeting should be. That's the struggle. The other important thing that's in here is, and I just want to name because we're about to have a training session. So we have nothing in our governance system that talks about education sessions, or that it's allowed, or how that works. Because usually in legislation or governance, if it's nothing, if it says nothing, it means it's not allowed, which is a bit awkward. So we have a training session coming up, and having it named as an education session as outlined in here would be the proper format to use. I have taken no issue in having it later in December. I just want to make it known that we recognize that the training is happening outside of a governance framework. We are looking to remedy that with bringing that in with the procedural bylaw.
So with regards to that session, how do we conduct that then? Does that have to be under the current format? Does that have to be a public session, even though it really is for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're going to conduct it the way that you have conducted these things in the past, with no governance format. It's not a public meeting. It's not a public format.
Right.
So again, the only way I can put it is you're outside of a governance framework here. We're putting the system into place, but there's really no formal rules around what that is. I'm still recommending that the training go forward.
Sure,
So I'm
yeah.
not saying that be canceled. I'm saying that in recognizing that we are making the change. It's just coming later in December.
So with the new amendments, we would be able to say, this is an educational session, this is
That's
what we're
correct.
doing.
Yes,
Okay,
and
yeah.
it brings, the change brings in a form of accountability. So not only would the public be able to understand that council is attending training sessions, but the actual attendance of each elected official will then be carried through to council, so it's public who actually did attend the training. So it's clear, it's a transparent process.
Just repeat that, what was that, again?
So in the education sessions, There's, in your procedural bylaw, it will tell you what the rules are. So in other words, in an educational session, you can't debate council business. There's no council business of any kind. Instead, you're receiving the information. But attendance at the education session is made public, not that night. It's the education session too. So the topic of the education session, along with the attendance at the education session, is then provided at a future council meeting. So there's accountability in two ways there. Accountability in terms of how elected officials are spending money, in terms of having the training session and what was paid for, and then who actually attended the training session. And that's what's currently being proposed in the procedural bylaw.
I thought that educational sessions were, the first bullet in that was that they're optional. If I remember, I think there was a list of bullets. I might be wrong. I could go back into that, but
No, Mr. Chair, while you're looking there, I know when I was on council and Sue was here back in 2000, 2006, we had committee of the whole meetings. So,
this is the education sessions.
yeah, but committee of the whole incorporates educational sessions like we did back in 2000, 2006. There were discussion items that were discussed, and of course, the mayor of the day, sensing that we could get something out of it, would close the committee of the whole meeting and then have a public meeting. Now we're required by the Municipal Government Act, we have to give 24 hours notice to the public. Those days are gone, but this committee of the whole meeting doesn't obligate councillors to be here. It's a meeting to get information. So take Friday and Saturday. If that was a committee of the whole meeting, I wouldn't have to be concerned about quorum.
Okay, if I may, Mr.
Go ahead.
Chair. So the two different things here. An
Yeah.
education session is not the same as committee of the whole.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Committee of the whole will have quorum, just like your other committees have quorum.
And the
Because
committee
committee
of
of the whole is a committee of council.
the whole, right,
Right? Just like your other committees are.
right,
So your committee of the whole follows the same rules as your other committees do,
right,
all the same. So not to be confused with education sessions.
right.
So committee of the whole is a completely different function.
Okay, so but does the education meeting require a quorum?
No.
No.
So
Three
education
people can show up,
sessions,
three councillors can show up and we have an education meeting?
that's correct.
Is that effective?
So, well, here's the accountability piece that I was just talking about. So I've just pulled it up here on my screen.
Yeah.
The new education sessions section of your procedural bylaw, and the chair is correct. They are optional and they don't require quorum. However, the public has a right to know where elected officials are spending public money and if they're attending certain training that in the future may be mandated for the board to have to go through. So whether that's governance training or onboarding when your elected first comes together. So the accountability piece in here is like you get to choose whether you show up or not, but it will be made public who did show up.
So?
So that's all. That's all I was highlighting as part of the list.
So what, I showed up, I didn't show up? Like, again, the committee of the whole meetings are meetings to discuss issues, and you're saying that they have to be live streamed. I think the education meetings now are just becoming redundant. We may end up here with maybe two councillors. Do we have the meeting? Like, do I book out my morning for an education session and no one shows up? Like, I think this is where you're gonna have some blowback on this issue, is that if there's really no intrinsic value to it, why show up?
Through the chair to the mayor. So your committee of the whole is different than your education session. So you currently have a strategic plan that says equity, diversity, and inclusion is important to you, right? So we'll use the example, in 2 weeks, council is receiving equity, diversity, and inclusion training, right? So the public may want to know who attended that and who didn't. That's right? That's right. But this is not in place yet.
No,
So
I
that's
know.
not something that anyone would be able to see. It's a question of being accountable to the public.
Right.
Right?
We are.
So if, in your strategic plan, if you were saying something is important to you, council has stated That is what is important to us, or good governance is important to us. Therefore, as a council, we're going to pay for, with public money, someone to come in and train us on this so we know what it is, what we're working within, how we can improve, all those different things. It's the accountability piece that's in there. So is there going to be training sessions every month? No. It'll be whatever you're asking for in your strategic plan. If council's requesting a certain amount of training that comes in with that, then that's something that we would bring in. That's what an education session is.
Again, that's why I think this is going to need a lot of debate on the 27th. I think that if it's EDI or any issue that we bring council into this chamber for that purpose, to learn something new, if someone doesn't show up and we don't have quorum, like if last Friday we didn't have quorum, it would not look good, very good on council, mayor's office, and the administration, that we had a budget presentation for the 24-25 fiscal year, and council couldn't get a quorum. Like, that's a black eye that I wouldn't want to wear. But hey, I'll show up. And again, we had some presentations here. Let's say we had a presentation like we had the other night, and it was education, and 3 councillors showed up. How would that look? So again, I think, committee of the whole, special meetings, open or closed, that's where we should stay. That's our laneway. These education sessions, I find them useful, but I think they can be incorporated just through our function and administration of council as a whole, council as a body.
If I may, through the chair.
Sure.
The difference here is your education sessions are not publicly broadcast because you're not conducting council business. In a committee meeting, it's council business. It's an appointed meeting from council to conduct business in. A council meeting, it's public. It has to be open under the Municipal Government Act. Committee of the whole has to be open under the Municipal Government Act unless you meet certain points in Section 119. The point of this education session is allowing council to be able to meet in a learning environment where it does not have to be publicly broadcast. But because it's not publicly broadcast, the public still has a right to know who attended the session. So I would recommend that you don't do away with education sessions completely. If the issue is having to report back on who attended, then consider removing that section of the part. But you need right now, there's nothing in place that says you can onboard without broadcasting publicly, that you can have any form of training without broadcasting publicly.
This is one of the big drawdowns of the Municipal Government Act. Provincial government, federal government can have closed meetings, no minutes that are public because they're protected by cabinet secrecy. Here we are at a level of government we're a level of government. We are a municipal level of government. Education or not education. Like if I was coming in for a cooking lesson, yeah, I could see that as an education lesson. But everything we do in this chamber is governance. So I think that you don't have to close them. If that camera's on, leave that camera on. If we have to go into an open session because it's required under section 119, 1A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, then we can close the meeting. But to add another layer to our governance is, to me, I don't think I'd be very unhappy if I showed up in an education session under EDI and 3 councillors showed up. And the only way we reported to the media was that 3 councillors showed up, or we reported to the public. When we come here, that camera's on. Whether it's whether it's an educational session, committee of the whole, regular meeting, special meeting, closed or open. I really think that this other layer is going to get a lot of debate, just like I'm doing today.
Chair. Chair.
I'm fine with that. Deputy Mayor, you have some?
Thank you. Just to build a little bit on what CAO Mohammed is saying, when I think about educational sessions, I mean, they occur in every level of government, they occur in any type of management positions, any type of jobs. So, like, I'm imagining that an educational session only helps you do your job better. So if you choose not to show up, you choose not to show up. But, I mean, it's no different than in any any type of work. I mean, who wouldn't show up? I guess if you don't, I mean, how are you going to learn? But anyway, that's just my thoughts. And also, on a side note, if we are going to do these educational sessions, I would think we're going to they'd be more interactive sometimes, so they'd be over here in the Parkdale room, which I know eventually is going to have cameras, so we could still do what His Worship said and turn the cameras on if we wish, but I do see education and professional development, as not a governance piece, but a way to improve your ability to be a leader in a municipal government role.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify my position, I'm an educator of 30 years, just like yourself. Education is 30 years of my life, I put it into it. Education is always important. I don't think that adding another layer to our governance model is necessary. If we have an education system, an education presentation, whether it's an open meeting or a closed meeting or a regular monthly meeting, the chamber's open. Turn on the cameras. Like, if education is to be open, education to me is opened, transparent, and accountable. That's why that camera and these mics make us open, transparent, and accountable. That's my point. I'm not against education.
I think what we're talking about here is really moot at this particular juncture. Because I think this is a discussion that we've agreed to have on December 27th. So ultimately, as you stated at the start, Your Worship, this is an amendment to our procedural bylaw, and as such would have to be approved by everyone at council. I think everyone has a bit of an indication. There's already been some discussions that have been happening, and I know people have concerns, and that's common with any level of change. There's always reservations, there's always questions, there's always reticence, and this would be no different, and I wouldn't expect it to be any different. So I think what we do is we leave it, and we have food for thought. We can chew on this, think about it, and then have the wholesome discussions and figure out where we're going to be going on December 27th.
Again, just to repeat, Mr. Chair, the procedural bylaw governs us. This is what governs us in this chamber.
I get
and
that.
outside of it. So that's why the discussion to me is going to be important.
Yep.
And therefore, the 27th of December is a good time to have it.
And ultimately, at the end of the day, Your Worship, it's put out there for consideration. Like any other motion that we put forth in this chamber, it's there for us to decide. And we will decide at that point in time, based on consensus, which way we're going to go, yay or nay. And, but thing is, it's probably good that we're putting it on December 27th as opposed to December 14th or 11th or whatever it is. So it's there. And ultimately, we'll make a decision one way or another as to how it goes. Deputy Mayor, or sorry, CAO owner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, for me, this is just, it's a choice of council. So to fall within our existing governance system versus a change like this, if we don't have something that names education sessions, then the education sessions will be in public meetings that are publicly broadcast. Because there's nothing under the MGA that would make it private.
Yep.
The other alternative that's been provided here is to allow for education sessions where it is one-way information, but the public accountability piece is the report back on what the session was and who attended. So that's the public accountability piece. But by having it not broadcast, I'll use the example of the equity, diversity, and inclusion workshop that's coming up. So if it's publicly broadcast, you may not get the same sort of participation in that kind of education session because you may not want to ask a question that's very sensitive that you want made public and broadcast all over the place. Versus if you have the private education session, then council can ask the harder questions of their trainer and get a greater understanding of how they should be implementing these things. But like I said, through that, you get the report back of what it was, and then who attended would be public. If it's all publicly broadcast, you do miss that piece, and that's why municipalities take this extra step to name education session as separately. So I really want to clear that up. This doesn't mean extra meetings on extra days. You can have an education session scheduled the same night as your council session. So you learn something first, then you go into a formal council meeting. So there's lots of different ways that we can do this, that it doesn't feel like extra meetings and extra pressure on the elected officials. Thanks.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Sue. I said, if I'm,
But where do we draw the line? Like, this is the discussion I'm waiting to have in the 20s. Where do we draw the line on trainers won't do it? Or counselors might want to ask these questions in private? The objective of the Municipal Government Act was very clear, to make this body more open, transparent, and accountable. And where do you set the bar? Okay, training session, I want to ask some private questions. What about other issues where I want to ask private questions? That is why the Municipal Government Act took so many years to get to where it did in 2017, and that's what we're following. And if you can't say it in public, then you shouldn't be saying it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that's a position.
Yep.
So that's fine. There is concern about the trainers, and they have, commercially protected products in terms of what they train in, so maybe they don't want public access to that as well. But of note, and again, all the elected officials, I would encourage them to go back into the procedural bylaw, the draft one, and take a look at what's under the education sessions. There is no council business being discussed at these meetings, none. It's a
and no
one-way.
funds committed, no motions
Yeah, it's one-way
made.
information being received, but you have the opportunity to ask questions. So another example, maybe not so contentious as under equity, diversity, inclusion, but say you were in a governance meeting, and I know the world likes to say there's no stupid questions, but maybe one of your questions would be construed as not that bright if you were asking that in public. This would give the opportunity, like if you're having governance training, well, I've always wondered about this, but I've always been afraid to ask. And you certainly wouldn't ask it in public. But it gives the opportunity for a trainer to have a real conversation about maybe there are some personality conflicts that are happening on that council, that it's not council business per se as public, but it's dynamics on that council that the governance could help. Allowing that to happen, not publicly broadcast, allows things to be kind of addressed more fully that way. So
Okay,
I leave it with the elected officials to
Yeah.
make their choices in their positions, but that from administration's perspective is the true rationale of why this is all presented how it is.
And I agree with it. Going back to just on a pragmatic level, we go back to the council onboarding session that we had back basically a year ago at this time. You had to get special permission, or CAO Donna had to get special permission at that time in order to do it. That is a daily operational thing that we needed at that time. Personally, I'd like to have another one of those. Having been 1 year into the position, I'd love to go back and have another onboarding session that would be similar in nature, because I had no prior context. I had no prior knowledge coming with that onboarding session. I didn't even know who the personalities that were in the room. I didn't know who the director of this and director of that was. So when you go and you do that, and I think it would be good for someone like me, who's 1 year in, or someone like the deputy, or 5 years in, or someone like Councillor Ramsey, who's sitting in the back there, has been in forever, right? And let's be honest, refreshers are good. Reminders or updates or whatever it might be. As from an educational perspective, I don't see the issue. But again, I'll reiterate again, we can have this debate on the 27th. We'll make the decision.
Bring her on.
But I think we have to think seriously about what is in there and what the potential ramifications mean. And it is a change. So think about that and think about how you deal with change. And I say you or anybody, all of us, how we deal with change and whether the change is good or, and thing is, if it doesn't work, we always have opportunities to change it later.
Mr. Chair, but we did have change. It's called the Municipal Government Act.
I know, but there's, I
It flipped
think,
everything we did in this council chamber to a very open, transparent, and accountable level of governance. And I think it's been very positive and very good, not only for council, but for the general public to actually tune in on what's going on in this chamber. And I don't think that the days of closed-door meetings are regulated within the framework of 119, Section 119, subsection 1A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. That's when you can have your closed meetings and say whatever you want.
so I think you're confusing the two, but that's okay. That's where the difference opinion, I guess, comes.
What I'm not, one thing I'm not confusing, Mr. Chair, is that the procedural bylaw is what governs this chamber.
Yeah.
And that's the discussion we'll have on the 27th. What's educational, what's open, what's closed, what's committee of the whole. There we'll discuss it with all members who have 20 years of experience, 12 years experience, and some with new experience.
And I am not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that we revert back to closed-door sessions on matters that should be for public consumption. I think that there should be some matters that are best dealt with and in an educational forum and in an informal basis. When we get on, when those cameras get on, say what you want, the nature of the room changes. And the formality
and
changes.
so it should.
So, with that, there are times when informality should be the norm as opposed to formality. And educational sessions can provide an informal environment that we can conduct our business. We're not committing to anything public. We're not spending a nickel of the taxpayer's dime. We are not making any motions. But again, I'll go back. I think I'm going to cut the debate off on this right now. We'll have this debate on the 27th. But I think what we have to understand is 10 people are going to make that decision on the 27th.
Correct.
We'll have the discussion at that time. The information is there right now. Let's have the debate, let's have the discussion and see what we want. Ultimately, we will decide on the 27th. Let's cut the debate off here for today because really it's not getting us anywhere.
Yeah, so let's just emphasize at the regular monthly meeting, on December 12th, is it?
27th.
No, in our regular monthly meeting. No, our
11th.
December,
11th,
regular monthly meeting,
December 11th.
December 11th. Let's make sure we make the point, go through this procedural bylaw and the amendments that are being proposed by administration and has come to this committee, what we want to do and what we want to discuss on the 27th.
Well, wouldn't this go through on our minutes of this committee meeting and we would say it would be duly noted at that time that we're going to discuss this on the 27th?
Correct, but let's emphasize it at our regular monthly meeting. Please, read the package. Don't come in here on the 27th and start reading the package.
Well, I would hope people would,
Yeah.
I would hope
Well-
over something like this that there would have been a bit of advanced
Yeah,
prep
well-
going on.
I've seen it in the past.
Chair,
Yeah.
and also, anybody can come back and listen to this meeting today, and that will help them be prepared. So,
Cameras are on.
that's right.
Yep. Play it again, Sam. All right.
Did we miss the advisory board training? Did we skip through that?
You missed that one.
Yeah.
Yep. We did that. Okay, we have to move into a motion to move into a closed session as per
Chair,
section.
Didn't you
Sorry.
have something under new business you wanted to discuss?
Well, we have a motion to move into a closed session. We have to,
Oh, you have to do that first?
yeah,
Okay.
it's item number 7.
Sure.
Yeah, so motion to move into a closed section as per section 119(1)F, review of legal advice, dealing with the 11 additional allegations resolutions passed April 20th, 2023. We have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Yankoff, seconded by Mayor Brown. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we are now into a closed session.
everybody.
All right, welcome back to the open portion of our meeting, and our closed session is concluded. And just for public information, the information was shared with the committee and received as information. And we will be taking that to for further consumption at public, at the December 27th meeting, when we will be sharing our strategic priorities report at that time. So that's where we'll go with that. So that's the business arising from the closed session. New business.
Mr. Chair, just before we go on there.
Sure.
I know I missed, I didn't know it was so quickly, I just spoke to Chantel. On the advisory board training, I just showed her something that had passed. It happened before at another meeting where I missed a vote because I went to the washroom, but this time I was just talking to someone. Mr. Chair, is it an obligation on all advisory board members to attend? And if they don't, what is the follow? I just want that on the public record. Okay, could you please repeat it? I did not hear it.
Through the chair, to your worship, no problem. Everyone is encouraged to attend
Yeah.
the training, so there's no penalty for not attending, but what they do have to sign off on is conflict of interest policy, and if they don't sign off on it, then they won't be able to participate on the agency board or committee that they're involved with. Code of conduct, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome to the meeting, Your Worship. All right, strategic action plan, action update. Eleanor, do you want me to take this, or do you want to take this, or how do you want to work this?
I can. Thank you, Chair. So my understanding is there was a needed or requested update on this. This I can talk about now. I don't think we need to add it to next, like a report for the next.
Yeah.
Like essentially where we're at with the strategic plan, we need a corporate plan developed for the municipality, for the operations, for the different departments, to be able to show how we're actually going to implement the strategic plan. What exists so far is what was called an action plan, which was essentially a list of all the projects going on at the municipality right now, which doesn't, at a high level, yes, it kind of shows what's going on in terms of implementation, but it doesn't really show how we are implementing. The challenge is that the level of, we need the line of directors to be put in place for this work to be completed. So Director of Integrated Growth, Community Services, and Finance and Corporate Services. Yeah. These are the folks who would put together collaboratively the corporate plan along with the operational plans that have to go on within the departments. The managers right now do not have the capacity to be working on strategic documents like these.
Yeah.
So once these new directors are in place, we will be able to start the steps and be able to come back to this committee regularly talking about the different steps that are being taken and actions and so on. Thanks.
And I think that was a great summation of where we're at, because one of the things we did talk about was that quarterly or on a regular basis, we wanted to report on those actions. In fairness to you and to the city as a whole, we've been dealing with upstaffing and trying to do that. And it's, if you don't have the bodies, as you say, to dedicate towards that, the work just can't get done. So I think there's an understanding. I think to your point, Your Worship, of getting it on the public record, I think it's important that we get that information out there. And as we move forward and the directors get integrated and moving along that line towards getting everything put in place, our updates will be more, will allow us to be more regular and to be more informed and complete that process as well too. So I just wanted to put that on there because I didn't want people to think that we'd totally forgotten about it or, shelved it or whatever it might be. So I think that's, it's a good, we're continuing the work and the discussions are ongoing, so I think that's worthwhile.
Yeah.
Your worship?
And Mr. Chair, if we don't get everything that we want, whether it's council or administration in the operational plan or the organizational chart, is that this plan, this strategic plan is 2022 to 2027, is it? It's a 5-year plan?
2026, wasn't it?
2026. Yeah, so some of it may not all happen this year, so we get 4 years and we can move it through the calendar as we.
And that was part of the process, was to, if you can remember back, we kind of indicators, hourglass designs or whatever it is, quarter done, half done, 3/4 done, completely done, not started, whatever it might be. So that was part of the whole reporting process that we wanted to do, was to say, okay, we're creating this plan, and we're not just going to create it just to say we created the plan. We're actually going to use it to monitor and to report on how those actions are progressing. So I don't think, I think that's part of it, was that kind of quarterly review, quarterly updates. And you're right, Your Worship, we may, an item might still be blank. There might be nothing done on it for whatever reason. Hopefully, we could have all filled squares or filled circles to indicate that everything that we put on there is completed, but to be realistic about it, that's not going to be the case. All right, good. So the committee action item list, I think that's kind of tied to, kind of stems from this a little bit, or it's connected to. Back when Curly was here, we kind of had an ongoing list that was created with Chantel, and like one of the items would have been like when Councillor Tweel was, for example, requesting the review of the MGA, and is MGA is going to be reviewed. That falls under our domain, but as we went through, we got the opinion from the province that there is no review of the MGA coming up, that sort of thing. So the committee action list is still there. It's kind of, again, a list that we want to create internally to kind of keep us on task if there are some things. So I just want to remind the deputy and his worship and Councillor McKinnon as well, and Sue and CAO, that if there are things, we do have a to-do list that we want to keep active on, and kind of help us keep us on track as well, too. Eleanor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think it's important with the lists and how we look at things, how they arrive at committee and requests that happen through council and directions and so on and so forth. One of the challenges is the capacity of staff to keep up with different requests. So I think when requests are made by elected officials, maybe it's at a council meeting or separately outside of here, the question always needs to be, is this a single elected official request that doesn't need to go through committee, that we can just get information for them and return it to them?
Yep.
Or is this something that has to go through committee and to council?
Yep.
Everything that goes through committee requires a report, requires us to put some extra work in. If it's a simple request of, where's the MGA review at, that wouldn't be something necessarily that warrants going through a committee. It just, it's a question to the province, we get an
Yep.
answer, we
Yep.
return it to the councillor.
Yep.
Really, what with the committees, and the struggle is when it's just a single elected official saying, we should do this, and someone says, okay, we'll add it to the committee, there's not actually a vote of council directing the committee to undertake that work and get it done. Thinking it through in terms of, yes, this is something as council, as a body, that we want to look at instead of one single idea. So this is how we can start to look at and prioritize things a little bit better for staff in terms of where we're investing our time and money as a municipality. So between all the committees, and I see this committee as the one that kind of helps set that governance in place, I think it's important some of those conversations start to happen.
Yep.
Because individual ideas of elected officials of value for sure, and administration is happy to provide that information. It's a question of what venue should it be going through, just a simple email response versus coming back through a committee process and back to council.
Valid point.
Yeah. So I'm not sure yet how we formulate that, but I guess if we further concentrate with our committees, that what really should be at committee is policy, program, service and discussions around those. Individual council inquiries or passion projects, whatever else, unless it's by approved resolution to undertake that work through council, it'll be a one-on-one kind of email between
Yep.
administration as an info request. Thank you.
What
Sounds
were
good.
those three things again, Chair? Policy?
Policy, process, and
Policies, programs, and services.
policies,
Because
programs,
that's
services.
council's mandate under the Municipal Government Act, so that's kind of where you
Yep.
play. So, so you want to know about creation of new policies, programs, or services, or evaluation of your policies, programs, or services?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you'd be. And of course, the budget of how you pay for all those things.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
So, Mr. Chair, like the city of Charlottetown, we have standing committees. The province has standing committees too, and I know Councillor Tweel has been asking, not just this council, but the previous council, to request changes to the Municipal Government Act. And I think it would be a good idea on our part to invite Councillor Tweel to one of the strategic priority committee meetings and ask, okay, under the MGA, what are you asking to address? 2 issues?
No, that's been asked on multiple occasions.
Right. But has he identified the issues? No, and I think we should find out what he wants to address. And then if it does warrant going forward, there are 2 standing committees with the province or the Legislative Assembly, Education, Economic Growth, or Health and Social Development. And he could work with our committee or work with administration to develop a brief to present to one of the 2 standing committees to say, here's what I'm asking for, and you can do that.
Sure.
Because that's what these standing committees are for. They are for public input. And if he is so adamant, so focused on getting his changes or telling us what his changes are, let's move with it.
Well, and I think that was part of the discussion that we got back from in discussing it with Eleanor, is that that's the response that we got from the province. There is no appetite to undertake a review or to make systematic changes to the Municipal Government Act. So unless they are prompted with something, which neither I nor CAO Eleanor have, or you have, or anybody has, so I'm not going to deal with ghosts and say, yeah, let's make changes. Well, what do you want to change?
Right.
Don't know.
Yeah.
So until that comes forth, I'd be very willing to work with whoever,
Yeah.
whatever counselor wants to recommend changes. Not that we're shutting the door on it, just have to know what it is that we want to deal with.
Yeah.
So,
But as you know, the legislative standing committees represent the legislature. They don't represent government. So the legislative committees go out and get public input, and they take that public input back to committee, and they can funnel it through the Legislative Assembly, or they can funnel it through the department responsible for land use, communities, and municipalities. And that would be our Minister of Housing, Minister Rob Lance. So I hear it all the time. What about the MGA? Okay, come to the committee, go through that MGA and tell us what you want changed of the 223 sections that are there.
I don't have anything for you. Sorry. Yep.
Excuse me?
No, I don't have anything because I haven't received anything of that nature.
Well, this is an invite too.
Yeah. All right. Just a question. My point on the terms of reference, if you guys can look at page 68 on the document. So I was looking through the terms of reference on the various committees, and just on the economic, tourism, and culture and development, it says the chair or designate one voting committee member. So I think the word "and" should be inserted in there. The chair or designate and one voting committee member, because that's what it says in all the other ones. Just the word "and" is missing, but that's kind of not my reason. But the question I have is, if quorum requirement is the chair or designate and one voting committee member, is that an effective quorum? Because when we've been having meetings, we've always said you have to have 50% plus one. but our standing committee terms of reference says basically 50%, and the chair can't vote at the standing committee, so it's basically one person making a decision. So I'm wondering, should our quorum requirements change and say the chair or designate and 2 voting committee members? Because we took out excluding the mayor because the mayor is a voting member. So if we had a vote, say we had a vote here today and the deputy and the mayor didn't agree on a resolution, I would have to break the tie as chair, right? But if we only have the chair and 1 voting member, then that one voting. No, I know, but the quorum requirement says all we have to do is so we could have a meeting with you and me being the only ones here.
Fully understand it, because you can't move a resolution. You can't second a resolution as chair.
Right.
So it's ineffective, the meeting.
So I don't think our quorum outlines, I don't think our requirements are sufficient, because to your point, your worship, we couldn't have a mover and a seconder. It would be that one person is not, you can't move and second the motion. Yes, I know, but let's say it's just me and the mayor here, and there is a motion that comes through. He's the only one that can move it.
But I need a seconder.
Right, and you don't have a seconder.
Yeah.
Because I can't really do anything.
No.
So I don't think our quorum, and we've always said, I mean, we've been at different planning meetings for sure. I know, Deputy Mayor, we've had that where we say, do we have quorum? And the response always came back, 50% plus 1. Well, our quorum requirements basically says 50%, because we only have 2 people here, one of whom can't vote.
Mr. Chair, your terms of reference is at odds with your procedural bylaw. So the procedural bylaw says, subject to 113 of the Act, quorum is a majority of all members of council or committee of council. So you need 2 plus 1. And the mayor can be included, or the chair can be included in your 2 plus 1. So your terms of reference just needs to be updated to reflect that.
So then the
We just have to update it.
quorum requirement should be chair or designate and 2 voting members?
Well, your designate would be your vice chair. That's what that is, your designate.
Chair or designate, and currently it states chair or designate and 1 voting
Yeah,
committee member.
it's incorrect.
So it should say chair or designate and 2 voting committee members?
Majority plus 1. So actually, it doesn't need to say anything. You could just say quorum is in accordance with the procedural bylaw and the Municipal Government Act.
Okay, so in the other ones, they're all the same, with the exception of economic development is missing the word "and," but that's okay. I just think that we have to have, I mean, I'm okay with changing it to the chair or designate and 2 voting committee members. That gives us, it's basically the same thing, it's saying the same thing, we're having our majority plus 1.
We had a legal opinion that your committees have to odd numbers.
Right, and we don't have odd numbers right now.
So that's what happened last council. That's why we went up to 5 members for committees. So this 3 plus the office of the mayor made it even.
But right now, we only have 4 on our committees.
Maybe you have too many committees.
No, it's not that. But I would just go with what the CAO recommended, just the majority. Or as per the procedural bylaw.
But I guess the thing is, if we have full quorum, if we have the chair, the 2 councilors, and the mayor, you have 3 voters, right? And if it goes, say one of the voting members is not here, you have 2 people that can still vote and the chair who can break the tie. So you effectively have 3 voters
2
each
plus
time.
1.
Right? So that's where the plus 1 comes in. So I think that's where our wording or our our quorum requirements has to be changed.
50% plus one. Is that what you're saying?
Well, however we frame it, whether it says 50% or plus one, because we said it, we've identified in all our committee structures that it's the chair, 2 councillors, and the mayor.
So your terms of reference is subservient to your procedural bylaw. So
Okay?
it doesn't matter what you put in your terms of reference, the rules are the procedural bylaw that you have to follow. And then
Right.
that's subservient to the Municipal Government Act, right? So no matter what. So the best thing, the easiest thing to do is just tie it back to the procedural bylaw. Quorum will be in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Fine by
It's
me.
the easiest.
I think that just should be understood to everyone that again, that's a bit of a change because we don't have an alignment there as it currently stands. But, anyway,
So we'll update it for you.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other new business?
Chair,
Yes, Deputy?
I have 2 questions,
Okay.
if, with permission from you and the rest of the committee. Possibly they might be able to be answered, if I can ask those questions.
Go ahead.
One, is there any update on when we are going to be modernized enough that we are going to be able to have these committee meetings back in the Parkdale room? And my second one, is there any update on that hideous 45-minute mark where we get that weird automated thing that causes people to have to press *1?
Your favorite tool?
Yeah, from 1986. So I'm just wondering if there's, and if there's no update now, maybe we could just put it on for next committee meeting. But it would be nice to start having these committee meetings in the Parkdale room again.
Thank you, Chair. Through to the Deputy Mayor. So we're just preparing a request for proposals for there. There was a couple technical questions we're still figuring out for that room, so it shouldn't be long for that to go out. And then for the other piece, unfortunately, we could not get the service from Bell that we needed to fix that, and they said they couldn't fix it, so we will be going to a different provider for the conferencing line. So that's in motion right now,
Okay.
and that'll fix it.
I do have, yes, sir. No, or is that a supplement to this?
It is, Mr. Chair, because, again, I'm glad that our Director of Community Services is here. The deal with the Bell Alliance Center is that they took all our telecommunications, City Hall, all of the whole operations along with Bell Alliance. So that's why I asked the question, if Bell Alliance is going back to tender for that naming rights, I think we're looking at a different provider, like we're going to tender, and we could get a different provider, and if we get a different provider, I don't know how that will affect Bell Alliance. So, again, that's a bigger question that we may want, I don't want to deal with now, but anyways, but I know that we want to go to tender soon. Like, I think we can go, 2024? Is that when the tender closes on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm not sure about the timing. We do have contract obligations under Bell that we
Yep.
are held to. So I can't tell you when that ends, but that contract does not prevent us from using a different conference calling procedure or provider for, as far as I understand it, to provide this service for us.
Okay.
So, but I will express, we are quite disappointed with the lack of service from Bell in terms of fixing this problem and the attention that the city of Charlottetown does deserve. Thank you.
Well, I think in the spirit of giving, if you wanted to give the deputy a little early Christmas present, you would find a solution to that issue. Yeah. There you go. I have a question, and I had this before. It came up from us, a few residents now, about our online voting. And I know we had issues with it, where when it came time to a vote, the screen would pop up and it would show who voted. I've actually had a few residents who've reached out to me who would like to see that reinstated. I did articulate to them that we did try to do that, because I remember we were having, when we first started, I think my first meeting or two, we were logging in and we were having issues with that. And I don't know whether that's from a infrastructure issue or
No, it's,
I don't know what the issue is, but I'm wondering if that could be maybe, maybe you could just get back to me about that,
No,
or, and
no,
we
but
could get back eventually
I
to
spoke
everybody.
I spoke to Rory, and Rory said it's an operational issue. It may slow down the proceedings of the meetings because I have to go from one window to another. But yes, it'll be no problem to go back to that. That was the issue, is that the transfer from the voting back to open all the mics, there's a lapse of time, and you have some people hitting the buttons, right? Eventually it's going to break it. Anyways, it is being, it should be ready for the December 12th meeting, for sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Good to know. Thank you, Your Worship. All right, any other business? Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.